This forum is in response to a felt need among you all that many of you have expressed to me over the time that I've been here, a longing for a conversation about what we should do. You know, some of us here are or have been poor. Some of us haven't been. Some of us can speak to that, to a lived experience of that. Some of us can't. And this is the beginning of us teaching each other about this. And we thought it would be good to have some buddies from up the street come and start that conversation. So as I said before, we have Alan Thornton here. He's the CEO of the Rescue Mission. And we also have Anita Lightgeb. Say your title again. Director of Donor Relations, but her, even more important title is Doris Dorkoff's daughter, right? we love your mom, and we'll tell her that you did come to church. She's skipping Stewardship Sunday at her church this morning, by the way, to be here. So we'll tell Paul, your minister, that you're here too. Sign a note. We want to thank you for the work you do. We want to thank you for being here to help us participate in that work in good ways. Alan, welcome.
Well, good morning, everyone. And I just want to thank you all for having myself and Anita here today. And what a blessing your service was. There was such a sense of the Spirit there, and I just thank you for allowing me this morning to be part of you. And this is a jam-packed crowd, so I wasn't necessarily knowing what to expect today. So I will do my best to bring some value to this discussion. I'll do my best to answer any questions that you might have. I'll talk a little bit about kind of the history of the mission, overview of who we are today, what we're doing, and then try to answer some of the questions under this theme of compassionate Christian response to those that are homeless, to those that are struggling with poverty. So first and foremost, I want to talk about a little bit of history, because I don't know how many of you know. The Rescue Mission and Plymouth Congregation have an enormous kind of link in time together. You were one of our founding churches. So back in 1887, 9 churches came together, and they saw the need in the community at that point in time of people that were struggling, that were marginalized, that were caught up in some bad behaviors and some destructive behaviors. And as a result, they formed the Rescue Mission. And that work has been going on for 127 years. Which is incredible. And so kind of going back to Quinn's comments this morning about how the people at that point in time, from the same sense of stewardship, came together and said, we want to come together to help our neighbors in need. And who would have thought that 127 years later, not only would that work be continuing, but it would be flourishing and as large as it is and as old as it is today. So pretty amazing. For those of you that don't know about the work of the Rescue Mission, first of all, we're only about a block and a half away from you, so we're very close. Our mission is very simple: share hope, end hunger and homelessness, change lives, and strengthen communities one person at a time. That's what we do. So let me talk a little bit about what that looks like. How and why do we share hope? And if you don't mind, I'm just going to lose my jacket here. So one of the things that I try to do on a monthly basis, I do what's called a CEO Serve thing, where I go out on the front lines of the Rescue Mission somewhere in our programs, unannounced. I kind of arrive and I don't let people know who I am, and I just serve. I'm just there to see and interact with the people that we serve, the people that are receiving our services, trying to understand their story, trying to understand what has brought them to the mission, and then trying to just assess, are we doing all we can to help them, and watching our staff interactions and all those things. And this past week, I had an opportunity to serve in our shelter Tuesday evening. And some of the stories that I walked away with and some of the encounters I walked away with will stay with me for a very long time to come. One of the very first ones was a gentleman that I met named Robert. And Robert is staying in our shelter, and he came in for an intake, and I sat down with the case manager that was doing the intake with him to understand why he's homeless, how did he come here, and how can we help him. And Robert is recovering from surgery. So just 2 weeks ago, this guy had major abdominal surgery and can barely walk, and he's in our shelter recovering. So first of all, just think about that. Major illness, catastrophic injury, and as a result, nowhere else to go but to come to the shelter to try to recover physically. You know, a very difficult place to be. On top of that, I found out that Robert is an immigrant refugee. and has been in our country for 20 years, came from Cuba. And I don't quite fully understand his status. I couldn't assess that in a short time that I was with him. But just the challenges that he has in trying to navigate through the system so that he can find employment, so that he can be able to provide for himself, ultimately be able to move out and find housing. He had been working, but because of his illness and because of the required surgery, he had to stop working and ended up having to now recover. And he's hoping to be able to work when he goes back, and he's able to recover his health. But along the line, he had to kind of take out his ID and show it to the case manager, and he opened up his wallet. And I'll always remember this. First thing right in his wallet is the picture of his beautiful little child. Just think about that, right? And it just kind of speaks to how the men and women that we serve, those that are homeless, those that are hungry, they're just like you and I, right? They have the same kind of feelings for their families. They're somebody's father, somebody's daughter, somebody's brother and sister. And, they want to experience life to the fullest extent that they can. And here's this guy in his probably mid to late 30s, and he's finding himself at the mission, and he's trying to put things back together and be able to move forward with his life so he can support, that beautiful child that he has. Another person I met, this was a little bit of a different scenario. This is a guy that was incarcerated for 5 years for drug charges. And he shared his story. He owned up to it. He's like, yeah, I did all the things that they charged me of doing, and I shouldn't have done it. I was caught up in that lifestyle. I was making a lot of money, and I got caught. And I ended up serving 5 years in prison, and he had been recently released. He had been in the shelter for 3 weeks, but he was determined to make the most of this new opportunity that he had, and went right to work quickly, found employment, and the very next day was scheduled to move into his own apartment, which was really exciting. And he has now a new lease on life as he moves forward. And then one of the last individuals that I sat in with during a case management session was this gentleman that came in, and he's probably, I would say, mid to late 40s. And you could tell physically had some significant struggles, moved very slowly, sat with him, and he was just an open book. And part of the reason he was an open book was that our case manager was so lovingly affirming to him, and just meeting him at where he was and just welcoming him in, very much the way that you welcomed everyone in this morning in your service. And he opened up, and he's a disabled veteran. He received his injury during his time of service, and he has incredible struggles with pain. He is in constant pain as a result of these injuries that he sustained. And we also found out through the course of our conversation that he has HIV/AIDS and is struggling with that, that he's also been recently diagnosed with cancer. And then if all of those factors weren't enough, because of his pain and just the constant agony that he's in, he has also fallen into addiction as well with drug use, and certainly uses legal prescription drugs to manage his pain. But he said, I'll use whatever's available, essentially, to dull the pain, and that's been heroin, that's been cocaine, it's been whatever to help him. And, my heart just broke listening to this guy, thinking, oh my gosh, of course you have all these challenges in your life. And what can we do as a rescue mission to help you and help alleviate any of that suffering that you may be feeling and help you move forward with your life? And I asked him, I said, where did you stay last night? And he said, well, I didn't know I could come into the shelter, and so I stayed at this white house on the other side of the street that is kind of abandoned, and so I broke in there, and I stayed there just so I would be in off the street tonight. And I said, well, that's good news because we own that house now. We just bought that from the land bank. And so I'm glad that you were safe tonight, or last night. And more importantly, I'm glad you're with us tonight, and we can help you begin your journey, hopefully out of homelessness and into a new life. And so when we talk about sharing hope, it's the hope that you don't have to be defined by the fact that at this point in time, you're homeless, or you're unemployed, or you're addicted, or any number of challenges that you're facing in your life, that those don't define you and who you are and how God sees you. We have hope for you that life can be more than what you're experiencing today. And we come alongside individuals. We help understand what their unique challenges are, as well as what their unique strengths are. And then we begin building a plan together that will ultimately help them move out of this state of homelessness, move into a place of their own that they can sustain with the necessary supports in the community that's going to help them continue to move forward with their life. So if they're struggling with mental illness, we'll try to connect them to services. If they're struggling with addiction, we'll try to connect them with recovery services. If they're struggling finding employment, we have a workforce development program that we can help connect them and help them get job skills that will ultimately lead to finding and sustaining employment. And last year, the Rescue Mission in 4 different communities with the majority of our services here in Syracuse, we were able to help 660 men, women, and children move out of homelessness and move into a place of their own where they can call home, which is really exciting. And this is 660 less men and women, children that are out on the street tonight, that are not in their car tonight or in an abandoned trailer with no running water and no electricity or in a building somewhere. But they have a place that they can call home tonight. And last year we were able to help 220 people find employment and be able to start providing for themselves and providing for their families. And so we celebrate that. That's the hope that we have for each man, woman, and children that we come or child that we come in contact with. And we believe that we are ending hunger and homelessness one person at a time. And the stories have changed lives. A month ago, we celebrated our Hope Awards. It's an annual event that we do. And what we do is we recognize those that have come through our programs, and we give them awards, and we make a big deal about them, and we throw them a big dinner. Because a lot of folks that we serve haven't received that kind of affirmation and recognition before. And so we had a special event at Sky Armory for our program here in Syracuse, and about between 40 and 50 men, women, and children came up and received awards. And it was how they got housing and how they found recovery and how they found employment and how they reconnected with their family. I mean, just exciting things that we're celebrating. So life change is happening through the work of the Rescue Mission. And we believe with every life that changes, we're helping to strengthen the community. And we are in 4 different communities. So what you all helped plant back in 1887 has grown to services here in Syracuse, where we provide 750 meals on average a day. That's 3 meals a day, 365 days a year, about 250,000 meals just served in this community alone. We provide almost 80,000 articles of clothing a year through our outreach store, as well as our other 14 thrift stores that are in 8 different counties. And then we are, in terms of housing, on any given night at the Rescue Mission here, we could have over 210, 215 men in residence with us. And that's from our emergency shelter, where we have 132 beds, to a small transitional workforce development program, to permanent housing, permanent affordable housing, where once people have established income, if they want to, they can move into a room if it's available at the mission, and they start contributing a program fee. And we're just providing support services and a supportive environment and affordable housing at that point in time. Often we're that step before they move back into the community, into their own apartment. So pretty cool stuff happening here in Syracuse, from emergency shelter to transitional to permanent housing. And that's about 215 people on any given night. In Auburn, we work with homeless families. And so we have apartments, 10 apartments with the Auburn Housing Authority. And we do the same thing. Families are referred to us. They come into our apartments. We support them with case management. And then we help find them resources in the communities and ultimately help them move back into their own place, which is really cool to see. 95% of the families that we work with have encountered domestic violence. Mom has literally picked up her kids, picked up whatever she could grab, got out of that dangerous situation, and ended up homeless as a result. And then they come to the mission and they're able to get help. And then in Binghamton, we work with 32 homeless men at a time in a facility there called Whitney Place. And in Ithaca, we've been active for about a year and a half now, providing permanent housing as well as emergency shelter for men, women, and children in that community. And we have about, I think it's close to 45 people that in any given night. So any given night here at the Rescue Mission, we could have about 350 people in a Rescue Mission bed, trying to put homelessness in the rearview mirror and move forward with their life. And we are excited for that work because it is changing lives. In terms of what's on the horizon for us, we've got a very large project that just kicked off in October. We are at capacity with our emergency shelter here in Syracuse. So we're taking a facility that's about 26, 27 years old. It was a gymnasium. And through a number of different grants, we are building a building inside of that building. It's going to be a new day center, new emergency shelter. It'll increase our capacity from 132 beds to 183 beds. So we're excited about that. It should open about a year from now, and it's going to be just a higher level of quality experience for people that we serve, and it means more capacity to be able to do different things. We're the only shelter in town that works with 18 to 24-year-old men, and we see a lot of them come in, and they have a unique set of issues. And so one of the things we want to do is potentially look at that space and how can we set it up differently. Do we give them their own dorm space? I mean, how do we work with them and then case manage with them appropriately? Another group that we're really excited to be able to start thinking about how do we engage more actively is those from the LGBTQ homeless community. Out of the 1,400 people that have come through our shelter over the last year, only one person identified as falling into that group. And yet we know that the need is there, but it is such an underserved population. One of the challenges, I went to a conference last year at the National Alliance to End Homelessness, and the best session I went to was on creating a welcoming environment for the LGBTQ homeless community. And one of the things I learned was that 50% of homeless individuals from that community became homeless out of family rejection, which is just horrific to think about. And so as a rescue mission, we're starting the dialogue, how can we serve this community? And we are setting up an advisory group to be part of that discussion to help us think through that so that we can do it well. So we're excited about where we feel God is leading us as we want to continue to open our doors and welcome people in wherever they may be and then be able to help move them forward to a new life. So very excited about that. So that's kind of my overview and history of the mission and kind of who we are and where we are today about sharing hope, ending hunger and homelessness, changing lives, and then strengthening communities. As I think about kind of the compassionate, the Christian response to people that are struggling, that we encounter, that may be homeless, that may be addicted, mentally ill, whatever it might be, one of the things that I have been reflecting on a lot recently, and I'm going to read it to you, it's just a passage from Luke 4, and I'm actually working on a blog post right now, which I'm going to hopefully post this coming week, and kind of around this theme. And this is when Jesus is in the synagogue. They give him the scroll. He stands up, and this is the reading that he reads, which is from Isaiah, but it's Luke 4, 17 and on. And the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unrolling it, he found the place where it is written, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Then he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of everyone in the synagogue were fastened on him, and he began by saying to them, "Today, this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." And what I've been reflecting on specifically is what I see and interpret as two different kind of groups of people that fall into this passage. And why I think this is important is because the perceptions of those that are homeless and the perceptions of those that are poor and the perceptions of those that are addicted oftentimes is they're getting what they deserve. Right? And you've heard this, I'm sure. And if you've ever spent any time on Syracuse.com and read some of the comments, you know what I'm talking about. And when I look at that and I think of like, first of all, Jesus, he's coming in, and this is really him kind of starting his public ministry. And you know, he makes a point to say, first of all, the poor are going to be an enormous part of my work and who I care about. And then he kind of breaks it down into two categories, and I'm going to take some liberties and be very general with it. But one, it is a group of people who, because of their own actions, have found themselves in a bad place when he's referencing those that are in prison, right? And we certainly serve people at the mission that have put themselves in a bad place, where their own behaviors, their own activities, their own attitudes, and ultimately have led to a life of at least a period of criminality, which have caused them to be locked up. Kind of like that gentleman who said, "Hey, I was dealing drugs. They caught me, and I did 5 years." And then the second group, you know, he refers to those that are blind, and I'm going to kind of categorize as those that have become on the margins of our community through circumstance, not through any fault of their own, but they're there. And the cool thing is Jesus is saying that both groups fit into my kingdom. You know, both groups are going to have this opportunity to experience God's grace and freedom and mercy and love in their life when he starts talking about the year of the Lord's favor. And so that's kind of my backdrop, in terms of how I come looking at the work of Rescue Mission, and in terms of how I think about when we engage with people that we encounter is, everybody, Jesus loves everyone. God loves everyone. And if we are disciples of Jesus, then that's kind of incumbent upon us to be extensions of that grace and of that love in their life. And at the mission, that's certainly something that we're trying to do. Are we perfect 100% of the time? No. Do we make mistakes? Yes. But it's, for us, something that we want to make sure that when people come in to our doors and encounter us, when we see them out on the street, that they know that we care about them. So let's kind of look at what does that look like for me personally when I'm driving around or walking around. When I get to a corner and there's a guy holding a sign, and one of the things I do is I roll the window down and I just say hi. And I ask him what his name is and talk to him and try to find out how he's doing. I've asked him if he's eaten that day and if he would like me to take him back to the mission to get a meal. But the first thing I do is I acknowledge them, because there's a lot of people in our communities, those that are on the margins, that are invisible, right? That people want to be invisible. And I think when we give visibility to them and we acknowledge them as fellow humans, regardless of where they are at, right? Regardless of the struggles that have put them there on that corner, I think that's the first Christian response, in my opinion. Is just seeing them and engaging with them. And there's certainly things you have to be cognizant of. I mean, myself as a 6'3", 210-pound individual, I feel a little more secure in talking to certain people on the corner or going into some places than maybe others might. And I'm not saying that I couldn't be at risk too. I'm just saying that you do have to have your own safety and well-being and that of your family or those that are with you in mind. But the majority of people that I've ever encountered on corners or in encampments or on street corners, whatever it might be, they're not looking to do ill towards people. They have a story, and I think I'm starting to try to find out what their story is by finding out what their name is. How are they doing today? Where did they stay last night? Have they eaten? And it could open up dialogue, and who knows where that dialogue could lead. The million-dollar question is always kind of, should I give them money? And I think that's the challenge. And I'll tell you, there's no black and white answer to this. All right, just, I hope I'm not disappointing anybody. But I have given money to individuals. I have given gift cards to individuals. I have given pairs of socks. I have given sandwiches. I've done probably everything in terms of personally what I've done to try to help somebody in that moment. And I think you have to use discernment. I think you have to listen to the leading of the Spirit. And I think you have to look at what you have, at hand. And I do that with everybody I come in contact with? No. I mean, sometimes it's a word of encouragement. Sometimes it's an offer to take them down to the mission, But certainly, as a nonprofit that focuses on homelessness and helping to alleviate that in our community, we are a place that people can support, as there are other places like Catholic Charities and Salvation Army and Vera House that work with folks that are on the margins. And with your financial support, we continue to help make a difference in the lives of these individuals. I don't want to say don't ever do it individually. I think that's your decision, and I don't know if there is a wrong answer. One thing I would ask you to do is don't do it out of your own guilt. Do it out of what is going to help this individual, because that's really what's important at the end of the day. Is what is in the best interest of this individual. One of the big debates going on is public feeding, right? And there's places in the country where, in an effort to criminalize homelessness, which I think is wrong, and then in an effort to criminalize those that help the homeless, they've started actually arresting people that have gone through and tried to do some public feeding. They did this down in Florida. Do I agree that people that are going out and feeding people should be arrested? Absolutely not. I do think, though, you have to think in terms of a system of response. And here in our community, we have a pretty robust system of homeless service providers the Homeless Housing Coalition that meets regularly, that talks about these issues, and that coordinates our efforts. And one of the things that we have an outreach team that goes out 6 days a week, and we connect with those that are in the encampments or on the corners. We'll bring them a sandwich, we'll bring them water. So in and of itself, it's not such an amazing meal that people are waiting for us to show up, but it's enough to make sure that their basic needs are met. We always try to build rapport. We always want to bring them back to the mission. They don't always want to do that for a variety of different reasons. And if they're going to stay out there, we'll make sure that they have like blankets or something like that. And then we'll keep visiting them with the hope that we can ultimately get them into services. But know that in our community here, we have a really good response. The providers meet regularly with government officials, with lay advocates in the community, and we're regularly looking at data. We're regularly looking at where the challenges are, and regularly trying to figure out together how can we engage with the individuals. The majority of people that are homeless in our community are in shelters. There are people that still live out on the street, and some of them have been there a while. But the majority, by far, are in emergency shelters. That doesn't mean that they're not still homeless. It just means that they're in, quote unquote, the system that's built to ultimately try to get them out of homelessness, help them access the benefits or the resources they need to be able to get into a place of their own. I've been talking for a few minutes. I want to turn it over for some questions. First of all, let me just take your pulse. Is this at all helpful to you? Okay, so talk to me and ask some questions that you might have, and I will do my best to respond. Yes?
I think we're all looking to help in any way possible when we see the guy or the woman on the street. And I guess the question we ask is, are we helping them by giving them money? Are we creating another problem for them? And that's the struggle that we all have. And I think
Yeah.
the second question is, can you give us an idea of your interaction with these other agencies and with the coordination, so we can say, we'll talk to Alan at the Rescue
Right.
or whatever things can we do.
Right. So some people, let's say you give money, you choose, hey, I want to give a couple bucks to someone that's on the corner. Some people are going to use that to get some food. Some people are going to use that to buy drugs. Some people may use that to buy a hat. Who knows, right? I mean, that's a risk that you run anytime you give something to somebody. And honestly, are you creating a problem? I think in our community, it's not. I mean, like, compare it to Skid Row, where on any given night you could have 2,000 people that are homeless, right? We have a number of people homeless in this community, and during earlier this summer, there was significant panhandling that was happening, and the public feeding that was happening over in that area seemed to be creating a dust-up over are we creating a problem there? And I think we really have to be careful, because you don't want to promote behavior that's going to encourage people to not get help. At the same time, I think you have to be realistic in thinking, in my gift to this individual, is it going to put them over the edge? Probably not. And I think that's where you have to make that individual call based on the situation that you're facing right now. And would I always advocate that people give to organizations that are on the ground, that are helping these homeless individuals? Absolutely. I would say that's the first place to give if you're making that decision. Would I say never give to an individual? No, I would never do that. And in terms of creating a problem, this person that's there has some challenges, obviously. They have some reasons why they're in that place and why they're not coming into the system for services. It could be mental health issues that aren't being treated. It could be an addiction. It could be trauma that they've experienced earlier on, and they are afraid to come into a dormitory-style shelter to be able to start receiving services. So there's a lot of reasons why people are homeless. In terms of our activity together, let's see. We talk with our sister agencies almost daily. When it comes to capacity at the shelter, getting one person from a shelter that might have capacity to a shelter that does. When the other day when I was serving in the shelter, we had a couple that came in, and right now in Syracuse, our residential services are only for men, and so we called Salvation Army, and we were coordinating with them because they could house the woman and we could house the individual man. So, and then the homeless housing group that comes together, or housing homeless group that comes together, they meet regularly. There's meetings that are open to the public. They have a website, hhc.org, I believe is the name of it. where people can find out what's happening. So we have a lot of services in this community. People just need the ability to access them. When I talk to people and I ask them, hey, why have you not come in? A lot of times you'll hear, well, there's too many rules there. You know, that's a reason I get sometimes, and I just kind of try to file that one away. And that can be a throwaway, and it can be legitimate. I mean, so it goes back and forth. We have 130 plus people that come in. We ask that people not come in under the influence. But if it is cold outside and we have capacity and we think we can manage this individual, then we will do our best. But if they're going to be potentially a danger to themselves or they require a higher level of care, we will try to connect them to a higher level of care. But we would never put them out on the street. We would not work to do that. Question?
Length of time is the maximum you can stay, and if so, what happens?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our goal is to have you on to your next step from shelter within 45 days. And, the question was, is there a length of time? Is there a maximum length of time you can stay with us? So emergency shelter, our goal is to have you on to your next step in 45 days. But each person is different. Accessing veterans benefits can take a while for an individual. So they might be with us for 5-6 months, you know. So we don't have a hard and fast with the individual that comes into shelter. What we have is basically, are you working your case plan? And if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing relative to your case plan, we're going to keep supporting you, and we'll flex with you. In our permanent housing programs, we have 2 of them. One's an affordable housing and 28-unit program. Guys can live there. You know, we don't have an end of stay period. We don't promote that this is their last step. But some guys, they can be in and out in 6 months. Other guys might take 2-3 years to really pull the pieces together, get the stability they need to be able to move out onto their own. So it's case by case. And then in our adult home, we have a congregate level 3 care adult home on our mission campus because in homeless services, you'll hear it referred to as the silver tsunami, which is basically people that are going to get to a point where they just don't have the resources and they could become homeless in their later years. We have 50 men that live there, and they can live there as long as they need to. About 25% of them came through our shelter. Our longest resident has been there 29 years. 29 years, volunteers every single day that we're open in our accounting department. Yeah, question?
Yes, I wanted to know if you said a lot of the folks that you bring in or that come into you have been thrown out by their families for whatever reason. Do any members of the family that have felt remorse about that get in touch with you or go on your website and see if you have any knowledge of their family member?
You know, that's a tough one. We don't get a lot of that. So I've seen parents dropping older adult children off at the mission. I don't always know if there's a lot of follow-up there. So I get a couple encounters with different family members, but I can honestly say I don't have a ton of that. What happens, we see, is when the individual that we serve works towards restoring relationships with families. We had a guy that came through our shelter a couple years ago, 9 children. And when he came in the shelter, had 0 relationship with any of them. Now is working, has been promoted, doing very well, has an apartment we helped him find, has reconnected with all 9 kids. And when his son, who was down in the city, was struggling with homelessness, he took him in to help him. So we see that kind of thing. Folks are trying to, you know, when they're able to stabilize and move forward, they want to help their families. So we see that. We see people reconnect with loved ones, reconnect with their families, parents, things like that. Yes?
What are these folks do during the day?
Okay, so that depends on what their case plan is. So our shelter is open from 5 p.m. till 7 a.m., and then it closes, and we have a day center that's open. And our day center is a mental health outreach to the community through OMH, and people can come in there and just get out of the cold, get out of the heat. They can access other programs. They can just be there. It's just an open community center. In terms of what they do, a lot of them, you know, they're looking for work, so they're out doing that. A lot of them are going to DSS to connect or other appointments that they might have, medical appointments. They may have employment opportunities, so they're out. It really depends on what they are doing, and some just go out in the community. So some may go and hang out at the library, or some go to the mall. I mean, so it really depends on what the individual, what their story is and what their case plan is. And that's kind of, I guess, the best answer I can say for that. But we have about 200 plus people a day that come through our day center.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. My brother, who's passed away in 2 years, this December, he went to the Rescue Mission.
Mm.
And he found a better way of life for himself, you know. Him and I were at each other's throats because he was a drinker and I wasn't a drinker. And we connected, and my other siblings and stuff like that. But he learned how to cook and whole 9 yards. He met friends there.
Yeah.
He worked at No James for quite a while, way before he passed. And what he put in his obituary when he passed and stuff was that if you want to give back in memory of the transition, you can donate to the Rescue Mission.
Oh, thank you.
And there were a
Very
lot
kind.
of people who knew of my brother
Yeah.
or didn't even know my brother that gave, like,
Yeah.
like if they didn't have clothes,
Yeah.
or the men didn't have clothes,
Yeah.
they would
That's
do that, or they
very
would,
kind.
you know. And I was really grateful for the Rescue Mission because I'm a recovering alcoholic. And the Rescue Mission does do a lot of wonderful things for the gentlemen, for men, women,
Yeah.
children. And I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
You may not have known my brother,
Yeah.
but I have a cousin that's there.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Thank you. Just a couple final comments before I wrap up because I want to be sensitive to time. One thing, you know us as a Christian organization, one thing that I think is important for people to know is that we don't require people to participate in any of our spiritual life activities in order to receive services. So that's something that we shifted away from a number of years ago. There are missions across the country where chapel's mandated before receiving a meal, things like that. We don't do that. So our goal, and kind of the saying I have, is I'd rather people experience the gospel before they hear it. So I think that's one of the things that we try to do, and that's kind of how we approach it. The other thing, in terms of overall support, we love volunteerism. We're fortunate to have over 3,000 active volunteers a year. One of them, Jim, is in the back. Actually, two. Hi, good to see you guys. And so thank you for your volunteerism. Certainly monetary donations, and thank you for that. And then also, in case you're not aware, we operate the 14 thrift stores, Thrifty Shopper, and then 315 up at Marshall Square Mall. And when you give your donated clothing and household items like lamps and things like that, we give a ton of that away, but then we sell whatever we can't give away, and that generates a lot of revenue that helps us provide meals, clothing, and shelter. So we're fairly integrated in our efforts in trying to help people, and just always want to plant those seeds for people. So, and also coming up in a week is National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. So that's the 16th to the 22nd of November. There's a lot of different ways you can get involved. Tomorrow we launch our website, SyracuseHomelessChallenge.com. And you can find out how you can get involved by doing a food drive, clothing drive, how you can volunteer, you can learn more about the issues of homelessness. We're having a sleep out on the 21st over at our campus. So myself and a bunch of other people, this is the second time we've done this, where we're going to sleep outside for that night, just as a way to raise awareness. If it wasn't for the mission, there'd be a lot more people sleeping outside in the community. So, but thank you again for your support, and thank you for everything. Yes, Quinn.
Let me just ask you one more question, and maybe that one could be the last one. But can you said some ways that individuals can partner with you. Can you say some ideas about how Plymouth as an institution might partner with that?
Yeah. We have a lot of different opportunities for groups coming up in the next 60 days because of the holidays. So again, I would say if you ever, I know you have a food pantry here, but if you have extra and you would be willing to donate to the mission, that's great. If you want to come in as a group, we have groups that come in together. We do a lot of mail into the community with our supporters to tell them about the work of the mission. That's one of the ways that we raise money. We have groups that come in, and to keep the cost down, they stuff all the envelopes that go out in the community. That is an enormous savings. That's a great group opportunity. It's a lot of fun. It's a little community that happens. Certainly serving meals together, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And you could say, hey, once a month, we are going to have the Plymouth group that goes and serves at the Rescue Mission. That's a possibility. So those are ways. Anita, anything else popping into your mind? We've been... a lot of different special events that come up that you could volunteer at. One next week is a cookie bake on the 12th of November, where we open up our kitchen and we invite people to come in, our dining room to come in. They bring the recipes, they bring their all the ingredients, and they kind of make the cookies, and we bake them in our oven. We have a pie bake coming up. So there's a lot of different ways that people can get involved with the work of the mission. I would love to partner more with this congregation. I was so looking forward to be here today. I'm not sure when we last connected. And I've been in my role for 2 years as the executive director there, been at the mission for 20. I'm so thrilled to reconnect with you all as a founding church of the mission. It means wonders to us. So we will think with you, and if you have some ideas on how to get involved with us, we are all open ears. And Anita can help afterwards. I'll be around for a few minutes if anybody wants to talk individually. But thank you so very much for your support and time. Thank you.